sleep is regulated by two processes, known as process S and process C. Process S is also known as the homeostatic process, and this is a function of how long we've stayed awake. Think about this as sleep debt. More the sleep debt, more the homeostatic pressure. It's the sort of pressure that's pushing us to go to sleep. This debt or pressure starts building up the moment we wake up. And the less we sleep, more is the pressure or the homeostatic pressure to go to sleep. This sleep pressure or drowsiness, as we would experience it, is reflected as frontal theta activity, which is a slow EEG rhythm, 4 to 7 hertz. This slow theta activity builds up during the day and gradually declines during sleep. This theta rhythm is essentially predominant in the non-REM sleep, mainly between the transition from N1 to N3, which occurs in N2. Particularly in N3, which is a deep sleep, this theta rhythm changes to delta rhythm in normal, good deep sleep. This theta activity, which gradually builds up during the day, was found in brain fog in post-COVID, and this was found in a small study. Midline frontal theta, MFT, is actually a measure of attentional control, and in ADHD treatment, this MFT increase is indicative of better attentional control. So this is process S, or homeostatic process. Next, there's process C, which is known as the circadian process. This circadian process is controlled by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, which is also known as the master circadian clock that generates and regulates the body's circadian rhythms, which is the biological clock. This SCN, or suprachiasmatic nucleus, is the master circadian clock that generates and regulates the body's circadian rhythm. It synchronizes this rhythm to the environmental 24-hour light and dark cycle. Interestingly, each tissue and cell, including immune cells, have its own molecular clock known as the peripheral clock, which is also controlled and synchronized daily by the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This SCN is also synchronized to the external environment through Zeitgebers, which is known as time givers. Zeit is time, Gebers is givers. So these Zeitgebers are environmental, temperature, for example, daylight, food availability, and socialization. When we think about our eyes, in addition to rods and cones, which are responsible for night and color vision, the retina also has photoreceptor cells which perceive light intensity, so dark or bright. These are known as Melanopsin producing M1 type, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCS. What's fascinating is that these retinal ganglion cells have dopamine neurons, and they modulate the release of melatonin and dopamine, and they project via the retinohypothalamic tract to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which of course is connected to the pineal gland and modulates melatonin release. Let's see what happens when we wake up in the morning. If we look at light and light enters the eye, it's translated via the retinohypothalamic tract to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Within the hypothalamus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus then signals the pineal gland to turn off melatonin production. These retinal ganglion cells are most sensitive to blue light wavelengths. This is a high energy short wavelength, which is found in sunlight. But it's also found in a lot of light that we're exposed through, for example, phones, LED lights, etc. Blue light suppresses melatonin synthesis, just as daylight does. When daylight intensity is diminished, such as in the evening, its color spectrum shifts from blue to red. And when this happens, the suprachiasmatic nucleus signals to the pineal gland to produce melatonin. This is in preparation to go to sleep. Why is this clinically relevant? A recent study showed that greater night light exposure was associated with greater odds of major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, self-harm behavior, and psychotic experiences. On the other hand, greater daytime light exposure was associated with lower risk of major depressive disorder, PTSD, self-harm behavior, and psychotic experiences. There was no significant association between daylight exposure with GAD or bipolar disorder. But what this tells us is that avoiding light at night and seeking light during the day may be a simple and effective non-pharmacological means of broadly improving mental health. Dopamine release during the day is essential for optimal activity, cognition, and mood.